Okay, everyone had a nice lunch? Yeah, good lunch? Okay, very good. you, I got some lunch from you, I think, is that right? Yeah? Did you offer me some kind of, not sure what it was, some of it was very hard, it was very hard, some of the things I got, really, really hard. I thought my teeth were going to break or something. It was tasty but hard. No. You what? Ah, okay, okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. Ah, really? Okay. Okay, thank you. That was very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So now I can decide whether I want to become a monk in China or not. It all depends on the food, right? The food, very important. Very nutritious. Yeah. Okay. That's very helpful. Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, good. So I'm glad you had a nice meal. It's important to enjoy these retreats, and part of the enjoyment is the food and everything else. That's great. So now let's come back to the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, the Noble Search. And we have looked at the ignoble search. An ignoble search, as you can see, is just an ordinary life. That's really what it means. An ordinary existence that most people have. And so for most people who come to this sort of retreat, most of you, life is a little bit of a mixture. Yeah, there is a little bit of the ordinary kind of ordinary search in the world, but there's also an inclination towards the more spiritual life. And so there's like a little bit of a bit of a duality there, two things going on at the same time. So our job then is to kind of move that search more over to the noble side and away from the ignoble side. That's kind of what we're trying to do. And the more your view sort of aligns with the ideas of the Buddha, the more the mind inclines towards the noble search instead. So remember what we're looking at now. This is what the Buddha to be, before he became the Buddha, how he was thinking about life, right? And so we should try to see if we can understand things in the same way. So now let's see what the Buddha has to say about the noble search. And what is the noble quest? Quest is like search. It's when someone who is themselves liable to be reborn understands the drawbacks in being liable to be reborn, seeks the freedom from birth, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment, themselves liable to grow older, themselves liable to fall sick, themselves liable to die, themselves liable to sorrow, themselves liable to be corrupted, understand the drawbacks in these things, and they seek the freedom from old age, the freedom from sickness, the freedom from death, the freedom from sorrow, the freedom from corruption, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment. This is the noble quest. So you understand that there is a problem. And when you understand that there is a problem, instead of seeking more of the same problem, instead of seeking other things that have the same liability to all of these things, you seek a freedom from these things. Yeah, it's kind of obvious in a sense. And so this is a very simple idea that makes the Buddha change his course from the home life. Yeah, the Buddha was very much like we are today. He had a wife, he had a child, he was living at home, he lived in a very wealthy family for that time. And so very similar to us. And there is something in the Buddha to be's life that made him change his course, made him move in a different direction, so he could actually become the Buddha later on. And what is so surprising is that if you were to read the ordinary story of the Buddha, the kind of things that we often hear about as Buddhists, the legends and the mythology around the Buddha, it's often very complicated. And it sounds like some kind of amazing being who started out 4 incalculable eons ago, and he makes a vow under the kind of the Buddha Dipankara. He's the ascetic Sumedha, makes a vow under the Buddha Dipankara, and he practices all this time, and eventually he becomes awakened. But the reality, I think, is much more simple than that. The reality is something like this. He was reflecting on life what life actually is like. And that was what made him decide to go forward, to relinquish the household life, and to become an ascetic, to become a monastic. It's kind of extraordinary, the power of very simple reflections like this. And you may wonder, well, why is it that the Buddha thought like this, and he became a monk? Why isn't that every one of you? How come you are not becoming monks and nuns straight away? If you want to, we can arrange it, so please let us know. But why is it that most people, they're not just you, most people who hear this, they don't think straight, wow, I've got to become a monk or nun, okay, let me line up and kind of get ready, and I will, if Ajahn Brahm won't let me come to Bodhinyana Monastery, I will come anyway, because I will just tie myself to the gate, chain myself to the gate of Bodhinyana Monastery so no one can kind of get rid of me. There was a monk who said that many years ago, if I'm asked to leave Bodhinyana Monastery, I will chain myself to the front gate. That's what he said, because this is where I want to be. So you can do the same, see what happens. Why is it that we don't do that? And the reason is very simple. The reason is because we haven't really taken it on board. One thing is to kind of understand this in a superficial way, but understanding this deeply, it really changes your values completely. It turns the world upside down, and you want to live your life in a different way. So this is the power of these kind of reflections, if you do them properly and fully. And so I will spend a little bit of time trying to reflect a little bit on these things, to see if we can allow these things to go inside in a slightly deeper way, and see if it kind of starts to have an effect on how we think about our existence. It's kind of strange. These are the things that most people in the world don't want to think about. We don't want to think about illnesses. We don't want to think about death. Most people don't want, and they are missing out. Is that kind of interesting? The reason why they are missing out, because they're missing out on the opportunity to find something far more interesting and profound. So sometimes if you meet the challenges of existence, if you meet them head on, and you really go into them, try to understand them, try to figure out what is happening with your life, the things that are unpleasant, it is by challenging those things and by meeting it head on that we actually can make some headway, and then we can turn things around. If we just push it out of sight, we pretend we just want to be deluded, we don't really want to know about reality. Well, if you are deluded, how can you make good decisions in life? It's impossible to make good decisions. Good decisions always comes from seeing things as they actually are, seeing things for what for the reality. It's kind of obvious. All of life is like that. Anyone who is successful in anything in this world is someone who sees things the way they actually are, not someone who is deluded. And it's just as much, even more so, on the spiritual path than it is in the worldly life. So you've got to face these things. And when you face them, it opens up another possibility. Seeing things according to reality allows you to make new choices, to make your life head in a new direction, a place where you have never gone before. That is the idea here. If you're not realistic about life, no way you're going to have any possibility of making good choices in this life. And so this is what this is about, and this is why it is so interesting. And I'm pretty sure all of you here are interested in these things. That's why you are here, presumably. So you are in the right place. So let's see what this is about. So first of all, we talk about being liable to being reborn. So understanding the drawback, or the danger in being reborn. So why is being reborn a problem? If you ask some people, they will say, well, if I have the choice between being reborn and not being reborn, I prefer to be reborn. Because not being reborn, what does that mean? That sounds terrible. It doesn't mean I just disappear, or what happens then if I don't get reborn? Surely being reborn is better. Most people will think that, being reborn, I get another chance. But another chance at what? Another chance at suffering, maybe? it's not really another chance, because there isn't really that much to be done, really, apart from making the same mistakes, doing kind of the same things again. And so the idea of rebirth, if you start to understand what it actually means, it basically means doing the same things again. That's really what it means. Because usually we don't learn very much from one life to the next one. Yeah, why not? Because we've forgotten about our past lives. Yeah, if you've already been around many, many lives. If you had learned anything, you wouldn't be here. Yeah, you would already have learned these things here. Yeah, me too. I wouldn't be sitting here talking. I would be be somewhere else, because we already have learned these lessons. We don't really learn all that much. We just go through the process, unless you practice a spiritual path reasonably well. We go through the same things. Yeah, you go around and you do it again. And this is the idea of things going in cycles. The Buddhist idea of time is very different from the idea of time that we normally have in our lives. Most people, we have a sense of time as linear, going from a certain point, ending up somewhere else. Yeah, when you are born into this world, when you grow up, you're told by your parents, study. Yeah, study hard at school. If you study hard at school, then you have more choices. You can have a good life. Everything goes well for you. And then when you go to work, you work really hard, because then you have a successful career. So you work really hard. And then after a while, you wonder, why did I work so hard for everything? What was the purpose? Because now I'm going to die. What was it all for? And then you don't really understand, and then you die, and you wonder, oh, what was the point of this life? Very strange. And then the next generation carries on, and they do exactly the same thing that you did. You live for your children, so your children can have a good life. But then those children, instead of having a good life, they live for their children. And those children live for their children. And it goes like that for eternity. No one actually has a life. Everyone lives for someone else. This goes on and on and on like this. And then you die, and you wonder what you were doing. And then you have forgotten, and then you come into your next life, and you start again. Yeah, and your parents tell you, study really hard. And you say, yes, mommy, I will study really hard. Yeah, and you have the pressure of your family. Your family honor depends on you getting straight A's in school. And if you don't get those straight A's, then your family's honor is kind of at stake. And this is how it goes. Yeah, and it goes round and round in circular time, coming back to the beginning, starting out again. So ordinary, we feel that life is like a linear time, starting at a certain place. We feel it like it's going somewhere. That's what it feels like. Until you become old, you start to realize it was all a con. It wasn't real. Actually, now I'm going to die. I'm going to start from the beginning again. The feeling of linear time is an illusion. The reality is circular time. That feeling that we have is a projection of the ego. The ego, the sense of self, needs a kind of purpose, a sense that we are going somewhere, because that is what drives you. That is what enables the ego to do things in the world, because you're feeling you're going somewhere. If everything is just circular, you always come back to the beginning, it becomes pointless, right? Why are you going to work so hard if you just come back to the beginning again? It doesn't make any sense anymore. And so the Buddhist idea of circular time is very depressing. As if Buddhism wasn't depressing enough already. Dukkha, old age, death, and now add circular time to that just to make it even worse. So Buddhism is a very kind of very interesting religion, very interesting teaching. And so you have this feeling of circular time. And this is why this idea of rebirth is so scary in many ways, and so not really very attractive. And if you understand this idea of things always coming back to the beginning, one universe, then the next universe, one life, the next life, yeah, the same old habits recurring. I don't know what kind of habits you have in this life. Maybe you have certain bad habits. Almost everyone has some bad habits. And usually those habits recur. You get reborn, you have the same habits again. And that's kind of scary, because it means that, let's say you get into the wrong company, you get the wrong kind of friends, or whatever it is, then those bad habits get a chance to grow, and they take over your mind. And then when they take you over, you end up doing really bad things as a consequence. So I don't know about you, but I find these bad habits I have are really scary. I need to do something about them. I need to change. Now is the opportunity. I don't want to take the chance in my next life of having the same bad habits coming again. If you see any bad habits in me, tell me. Can you see any bad habits in me? Venerable, can you see any bad habits? You can't see, okay, you haven't, you open your eyes. You have to. So if you see any bad habits, tell me, because the Buddha said, if someone sees some problem in you, it's like revealing a treasure, because it is an opportunity for growth. Yeah? So this is kind of the idea. Then we have a chance to get out of these things. So rebirth is really problematic, because it is just an onward movement, and you have no idea where this is going to go. So it's actually very scary. And one of those interesting things about the Buddha's life before his awakening, one of the last things that he does before his awakening experience is remembering his past lives. And I think the reason he needed that, because when you see that, it is so shocking that actually all you want to do is to get out of this straight away, because it's actually so unpleasant to see that. So if you're going to get reborn, it is a problem. Now, so the Buddha, to me, seems to assume that there is rebirth. So what does that mean? Does that mean that if the Buddha assumed that there was rebirth, that's what it seems to be saying here, he thought there was rebirth, he wanted to get away from rebirth. But on the other hand, we also talk about the Buddha discovering rebirth. Sometimes we talk about the Dhamma, some people will say, this idea of rebirth, that's just kind of the cultural accretions of ancient India. They need to get rid of rebirth from Buddhism. And I would, of course, say that's the last thing you want to get rid of is rebirth, because if you don't know rebirth, there is no Buddhism anymore. Buddhism kind of collapses. It doesn't exist without rebirth. So what is it then? Did the Buddha discover rebirth, or did he believe there is rebirth? And I think both are true. So the assumption in India at the time is that there is rebirth, and that is why the Buddha is thinking like this. Why should I hold on to all of these things that get reborn? On the other hand, he also knew that it was just a belief. He knew that it wasn't absolutely sure, and so he also ascertained or made sure that there is rebirth by recalling his past lives through his awakening experience. So as always, things are quite complicated. It is not one or the other. There's a mix of things. Because why? Well, because life is usually very complicated. And so I would say the Buddha, yes, he assumed there was rebirth, but he also discovered rebirth, made sure that actually it is true. So this is the problem, seeing the drawback of rebirth. And then when you see the drawback of rebirth, then you seek the freedom from rebirth, right? And the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, Anuttara Yoga Kema. Kema, sanctuary. Yoke here is like a bondage. You are yoked, you are bound to existence. And so the supreme sanctuaries from the yoke is like the complete liberation from being bound to this suffering, this going round and round. This is kind of the idea here. The highest kind of sanctuary from the yoke. It also has the idea of a resting place. So the yoga kema is like the rest from exertion. Finally you can rest. One of the strange things about human life is that we do so many things. You get born into this world, and then from the beginning you start to have to work, and you work and work and work and work, and you work until you die. And then as soon as you get reborn, you continue working again. And we work, we never stop, we never really rest. And then try to meditate. You can't meditate working, the mind is working, right? Working. And so finally the real rest in life is when you achieve the awakening, and when you let go of all this working, and finally you can just relax. One of the most beautiful things about deep meditation is that it allows you to relax. When your meditation goes really deep, you're not thinking anymore. You become really still, you become blissful, you become happy. That is where you can rest for the first time in your life. And if you never had any real deep meditation experience, it means you never really had a proper rest in your life. Because that is where the work stops. You get the taste of Nibbana right there in deep meditation. Nibbana and deep meditation are very similar to each other. The difference is that Nibbana also relies on profound insight. And so the rest becomes final, becomes permanent. And deep meditation is more temporary. But the basic idea is the same. The deeper you go in meditation, the more rested you feel, the more powerful your mind becomes, the more blissed out you are, the more energy you have afterwards. There are so many good things that come out of meditation. Mindfulness is sharp, happiness is powerful, the energy is really strong. Yeah, you become like a nuclear reactor. Those are Ajahn Brahm's famous words. When you go into deep meditation, you become like a nuclear reactor. So are you ready to be a nuclear reactor? If you're not ready, don't come here. Yeah, go somewhere else. Kind of cool, yeah, to be so much energy. I think sometimes you feel a bit invincible when you have so much energy. Of course, you're not. That's kind of the danger, but that's kind of sometimes how you feel, maybe. And so this is this freedom from exertion. Finally, you can rest. And this is then also called, it says here, extinguishment. Extinguishment is translation for nibbana, nirvana, nibbana. This is the word. How do you say that in Chinese, Venerable? Nibbana. Nibbana. Okay. That's the transliteration from the Sanskrit. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. So this is a nibbana, of course. What does that mean? It means extinguishment. It means extinguishment in the sense that your defilements is extinguished, but more important, suffering is extinguished. So these things are extinguished. Doesn't sound all that interesting, right? Okay, suffering is extinguished. Defilements are extinguished. I often find these things not quite so, it doesn't sound all that interesting. So, okay, so suffering is extinguished. Then what? Does that mean you kind of, everything is really boring? Or if you just don't have any defilements, does that mean kind of life is really gray and no desires? You just sit there all the time? It doesn't sound all that kind of interesting. And so this is one of the things that we need to remember, that when we talk about the absence of these qualities, the opposite qualities become very powerful. So if you don't have any defilements, then the other qualities, the generosity, the kindness, the metta, the loving kindness, the compassion, the wisdom, they become incredibly powerful because the other ones are absent. And when dukkha is gone, the happiness becomes very powerful. And so from an ordinary point of view, these are very, very positive things. From the enlightened mind's point of view, they are just the absence of something. So we're coming from different angles. That's why it can be difficult to sometimes to understand. So that is the idea of freedom from being born, from rebirth. So So then, this is how the Buddha reflects. Themselves liable to grow old. Yeah, they understand the drawbacks in being liable to grow old. They seek the freedom from growing old, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment. So the drawback in growing old. What are the drawbacks in growing older? I think for most people, yes. Yeah, most people don't really want to become too old. Like a little bit older may be okay, but not too old. There are some advantages of becoming older as well. Often you feel more at ease in the world, you feel more relaxed. They say that older people are often more happy than younger people because you are more at ease with the world. There are some advantages. But certainly there are some big disadvantages as well. So what is the problem with growing old? Well, first of all, there are some very obvious things. You look at yourself in the mirror and think, wow, growing old, that's kind of scary. Not very nice. Yeah, you see kind of things kind of happening to you. You become weaker, you become more stupid after a while. Or maybe not more stupid, that's the wrong way. Because you lose, sometimes your memory gets a bit worse, right? And you become you forget what you used to know, and you become a bit slower, the mind slows down, all of these kind of things. This is kind of the danger or the drawback of growing old. And so that is the problem. Yeah, it is not nice. And so again, here is an opportunity, and the point that the Buddha is talking about these things, because there is an opportunity with all of these kind of things. And I will try to explain to you what the opportunity is. So let's say that you look at yourself. Yeah, one morning you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, wow, now looking much older than I did yesterday. What happened? Yeah, suddenly one day you see something that you didn't see before. Yeah, suddenly too many gray hairs or some extra wrinkles you didn't have before or whatever. Yeah, something is happening here. And you think, wow. And most people, when you see yourself in the mirror in that way, what do? Very often you just turn away. You don't want to see it. Yeah, you kind of denial, don't want to know about this. And so you move away and you kind of you feel a bit disgusted, but you try to forget it as soon as possible because you don't want to deal with these things. So this is the first thing that we often do. We deny these things. We don't want to know reality. We want to live in delusion. And if you want to live in delusion, there is no way you're going to have any success on the spiritual path. You have to be honest about what is going on. So if you do look at yourself in the mirror and you see some gray hairs or you see some wrinkles or you see whatever, stay with it. Observe yourself. See what is going on. And as you stay with it, don't try too hard to go to these beauty parlors. They lie and try to fix the things. And instead, stay with that. Yes, stay with what's going on. As you do that, the reality sinks in. I am liable to old age. This is what is going on. You can feel it in your bones that this is happening right now. And there's something very beautiful when that happens, because usually in life we are deluded by desires and by attachments to our body, by attachments to the world. But when you allow that reality of old age to sink in, not being in denial about it, you see it, suddenly it is as if something inside of you releases when you stay with that. You can feel that the attachment goes down. You can feel that the desire for being young, which you know it is impossible. And the moment you know it is impossible, the desire goes. The attachment is reduced. And so if you stay with that sight of, okay, I'm getting older now, actually you start to feel peaceful as a consequence. Suddenly the mind can become peaceful just like that, because you're accepting reality. And so then, that is where the spiritual path is. The spiritual path is about feeling peaceful. The spiritual path is precisely because you're having a small insight into the nature of your body. That small insight leads to peace straight away. That is how you know that you have insight, because insight and peace must always go together, because insight means a letting go of desire and attachment. And so suddenly you feel the releasing of something, and that leads to peace. This is very beautiful. If you are able to use these difficult realities of life to make yourself more spiritual, more peaceful, if you can use it in this way, it becomes a bonus. It becomes something wonderful in your life. It becomes something that you can take with you later on and actually enables you to practice the spiritual path. Your mind turns away from the world, away from the stupidity of the world, away from the denial of reality, and instead moves on to the spiritual path as a consequence of being realistic about a simple thing like old age. So this is the first mistake we make. Very often we are in denial about the reality. And the second thing we think, well, okay, We are going to sort out that reality. Yeah, we're not going to just allow the body to go at all. We're going to be in control of the body. We're going to use makeup. We're going to color our hair. We're going to use a bit of, I don't know, Botox or whatever. Yeah. So whatever it is that people use, that seems to be becoming very popular these days. That's what you hear. And whatever it is, yeah, people use all of these things to keep on pretending that they are younger than they are. And this is kind of what life, and it gives you an illusion that you are in charge, that you can control. This is the sense of self, trying to control reality. So two things: we are in denial about impermanence. Secondly, we are in thrall to the sense of self, who gives you the sense that you are in charge of reality. You can control the world. You can control your body. Two big delusions. Yeah, and if you can undercut both of those delusions in one go, it is great, because it makes you far more realistic. So ultimately, you're not really in control. Yes, okay, you can maybe hide some of the signs of old age. All you are doing is deluding yourself even more. But the reality is always there under the surface. And one day you will have to face it. And then it comes even more as a shock. So instead of trying to control the uncontrollable, don't control that. Allow things to be. And then as you do that, it becomes a benefit for the spiritual practice instead. This is how to use this. And if you use this in the right way, actually you end up like the Buddha to be. You end up going forth and becoming a monastic instead. So then you are liable to grow older. So instead, you seek the freedom from old age. You understand the problem with becoming old. Yeah? So you seek the freedom from these things. And the supreme sanctuary from the yoke and extinguishment. What does it mean to seek the freedom from old age? Does it mean that you travel around the world to find the elixir of youth? So you can kind of drink the elixir of youth and then you can be youthful forever? Imagine if you find something like that, and you imagine that you're not going to die, you're not going to become older. The only thing that is worse than becoming old is not becoming older. Isn't that true? If you don't become old and you're going to live forever, does anyone here really want to live forever? What curse could be worse than living forever? Yeah, I mean, it must be absolutely terrible. Imagine you have done everything there is to do, and everything becomes just absolutely terrible, and all you have to do is going through the same dukkha all the time, arguing with the same people until eternity. Yeah, that's kind of what living forever is like. It's absolute nightmare. Nothing is worse. So death is terrible. Even worse, living forever. And so we should, in one way, we should be glad we are dying. And on the other hand, dying also is no good. So we have to find a third way here, the way out of this. And this is what the Buddha is talking about when we're talking about coming out of old age. Finding a way out of this. So I'll talk more about the way out in a second, once we have had a look at these problems. The second one is becoming sick. You're liable to become sick. So you want to seek the freedom from sickness. The drawback in being liable to be sick. And I think it's quite obvious that becoming sick has drawbacks. You feel kind of terrible. I'm always surprised how terrible I feel when I get sick. And I keep forgetting in between. I don't get sick very often. So when I get sick, it's like, wow, this is what it's like. Jeepers, it's terrible. It's really, really bad. I'm not sure if I had COVID. I think maybe I had COVID. I don't actually know if I had COVID. But I remember when I was in the very early on in the COVID pandemic, I was traveling to Malaysia. This was in February 2020, I think it was, just when COVID was beginning. It was beginning in January or December or something like that. And I was traveling to Malaysia, and I passed through Changi Airport. At that point, Changi Airport was like a hotspot for COVID, because they hadn't really, usually the Singaporeans have everything under control, right? But actually they didn't have COVID under control at that time. And so I went through Changi Airport, and I traveled on to KL, to Kuala Lumpur, which where I was going to hold a retreat for the Malaysian group that we go to in KL. And when I got there, after a couple of days, I started to feel really bad. Yeah, I felt really, really terrible. And so it felt a bit like a cold, but it's just that it wasn't quite like a cold. It was just a bit worse than an ordinary cold. And so I had to cancel a couple of talks and that sort of thing. And everyone was really concerned about me, so took me to the doctor. So I went to this doctor, and he looked at me and I said, yeah, okay, whatever. He didn't seem all that interested, but he kind of looked at me. And then I don't think he wasn't a Buddhist. He was some other kind of doctor. He looked at me, and then he gave me some medicines and said, yeah, just do this. And I said, but this feels a bit funny. Could this be COVID? I said to the doctor. And he said, yeah, it might be COVID, but too difficult to find out, so just go back and do whatever. This was my brush with COVID. So maybe that was COVID. I don't know. I never really found out. This was so early in the pandemic that it was very hard to test it. Yeah, you had to go to some big hospital or something like that. Didn't really have time to have a test anyway. So, but I remember how bad it is to have these kind of illnesses. Has anyone here had COVID? Yeah, okay, everyone is nodding. Okay. So probably, okay. Illnesses are, you understand that this is the nature of the body to have these kind of things. And just like I was saying before, with old age, the way to think about it is to look at yourself in the mirror, take it on board. If you're very young, you don't have any signs, remember, it is inside of you. It is waiting to come out. Yeah, you're already old. They had this nice app. I don't know if you saw that app on the internet. You can kind of see yourself, what you might look like in 10 years' time or 20 years' time or whatever. It's actually very, very useful because it gives you an idea of what you're going to look like. And it's like, whoa, I don't want to see that. That's what it feels like. Yeah, you don't want to see it because it's not very nice. So see it. That's what I say, because it gives you some understanding of what it is like. When you get sick, remember, nothing has gone wrong. When you get sick, something has gone right. This is the nature of the body. Yeah, again, just like with old age, we try to use the sense of self to overcome these things. We try to control it. So when you get sick, straight away you go to the doctor, you get medicines, you say to the doctor, oh, doctor, something is wrong with me. You should never say that. You should always say something is right with me when you go to the doctor, because that is much more realistic. So you go to the doctor, something is right with me. This is the nature of the body. Instead of rushing to try to overcome the illness, we should try to overcome it, feel it, understand this is what it is like to have a human body. And again, it turns you away from the world, because this is the way that life actually is like. And as you do that, again, it moves the mind onto the spiritual path, because you don't want to live with this kind of body that gets sick in this way. And so again, same kind of idea again, like we had with the previous one. Then we come to the idea of dying. Themselves being liable to die, they seek the drawback in being liable to die. The freedom from death, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment, nibbana. So you see the drawback in dying. What is the drawback? Well, are you ready to die? If someone says, I don't like you, I'm going to kill you, what do you say? Do you say, no thanks, or do you say, yes, please? Most people say no thanks. That means you're not ready to die. Yeah, that's what it means. Why are you not ready to die? Because you are holding on to this existence. There are many things in this life that are dear to you. Yeah, things that are important to you. And because of that, dying means you have to let go of all of those things that are dear to you in this world. It also means you go on to an uncertain future. You don't know what's going to happen when you die. Yeah? That is kind of scary. The uncertainty in death is very scary. And so all of that is the problem of death. When you die, you have to let go of many, many things. Everything you own in this world, all the people that are very close to you, the people that are very dear to you, everyone has to go. You have to let go of your body. Don't put too much effort into your body, just enough to keep it healthy. Not too much, because you're going to have to let it go anyway. Yeah, it is not really your body. It is just nature kind of You're hanging out with this body for a while. And you also have to let go of so much of your identity. Because so much of your identity, who you are, Buddhist monk, this kind of an identity. When you die, you're not a monk anymore, you're nothing, you're just a spirit. When you die, that's gone. Nationality, all this identity, even gender, kind of disappears a little bit when you die in the dying process. So much of your identity is gone. And so this is kind of the danger of dying. If you attach to too many things in the world, the dying is going to be very difficult. But if you are able to let go of some of these things as part of this practice, then the dying process is far, far easier as a consequence. In many ways, you could say that the practice of Buddhism is like you're preparing yourself to die in a peaceful and a beautiful way. This is a part of what this path actually is about. So death is kind of, people are scared of it. But if you die well, it is not really scary at all. And it becomes a very beautiful and peaceful experience for most people. And so the Buddha sees, the Buddha to be, he sees that if I attach to all of these things, and then I'm going to die, all of these things are going to die from me. Why should I go and attach to them? It doesn't make any sense. Instead, let me try to find a solution to this whole dying business. And this is, in many ways, the most powerful of these contemplations, the idea of death. Because the idea of death incorporates kind of sickness and old age into it. Because usually when you die, you are also old and you're often sick at the same time. And so it brings everything kind of together very powerfully, the idea of death. And this is one reason why the death contemplation is such a powerful thing to use. Maybe the thing, more than anything else, that drives you towards the spiritual path and away from the worldly life. It makes it very clear what is important. It makes it very clear what you should prioritize if you're going to die. Why prioritize the things of this world when you have to give it up, maybe straight away? If you're going to die later on this afternoon, how much time are you going to spend just doing things of this world? How much are you going to fantasize about what you're going to do with the rest of your life if you're going to die this afternoon? You're not going to fantasize at all. You're going to let it all be. In fact, that is why people who are close to death or who do the death contemplation well become so peaceful, because there's no longer any interest in this world. This world becomes kind of irrelevant. But don't wait till you actually die. Use that contemplation now. Because it has such power, now is the opportunity to remind yourself, I could be dead tomorrow. It is real. One day, it is going to be tomorrow. So what if I'm going to be dead tomorrow? What does that mean right now? What does that feel like right now? If you're really going to be dead tomorrow, what does it feel like? Well, actually, it means that actually there isn't many things to really be interested in anymore. It means that I better say goodbye to these people. I better let go of these arguments. You don't really want to have any arguments with anyone if you're going to die tomorrow. Is the last thing you're going to do before you die having an argument? It's the last thing you want to do. Usually you become more kind, you become more gentle if you know that you're going to die tomorrow. And so the idea of death has a very positive influence on us as human beings. We become more peaceful, we become more gentle, we become more kind, we let go more, we treat people in the right way. People who use these kind of contemplations well, they say that when they leave their house in the morning, they always make sure that they leave in a good way, because they could die today. I can't really afford to have an argument with somebody if I'm going to die today. And what it means you never have an argument again. If you still have arguments, it means that you haven't really taken the death contemplation on board properly. When you fully understand what is going on, you stop having arguments. You stop being interested in what the future brings, because you don't really have a future anymore. It's one of the beautiful little contemplations or mantras you can do in your meditation. I have no future. It kind of nice, isn't it? Because usually when we say that someone has no future, it's like a negative thing. Yeah, you have no future. Yeah, you're hopeless. Actually, it is the hopeful people who have no future. Yeah. So you have no future. That's something very nice, because once you cut the future off, there's only the present left. You also cut the past off as well, because the past is the same thing. The past is really, you forgive the past. You forgive the people in the past, so the past is also gone. I have no future. You have no past. Why? Because you can die at any time. This is the idea here. And that makes you mindful. It makes you present, because there's nothing else to be done. Death contemplation, very, very beautiful in this way. Makes you peaceful, makes you kind, makes you, all of the good things come out of death contemplation. And what is really extraordinary here, of course, is that the Buddha, to be, decides to become a monk based on these kind of contemplations. So the Buddha, to be, particularly death contemplation, is probably the most important one of these things, combined with maybe the rebirth contemplation, because death is especially powerful when it becomes part of the rebirth idea. So the Buddha, to be, decides to become a monk based on the death contemplation. In fact, you can argue that the reason why we have Buddhism in the world now is because one person 2,500 years ago contemplated death so profoundly that he discovered the answer to the meaning of life, taught Buddhism, and that's why we have Buddhism now. The Buddhist teaching, the Dhamma is here now, because of one person contemplating death. Death is, in a sense, the foundation. Death contemplation is the foundation of this whole thing we call Buddhism, combined with the idea of rebirth. The two together are the foundation of this. That is how powerful it is. So it's kind of quite remarkable when you think about it in that way. So please try to do a little bit of death contemplation. The trick with making the death contemplation work is to make it real. It really has to feel like you could die later on today or tomorrow. If that is too close, you find it too difficult, make it next week. If that is too hard, make it next year, right? So it kind of do what you can. Don't, if it feels, because for some people it can be kind of scary and unpleasant. So if it's really scary and unpleasant, don't force yourself, because then it will backfire. But and then when you feel comfortable, then okay, bring it slowly closer and closer. And the Buddha said, how close shall it be? The Buddha said the right way of doing death contemplation is to be ready to die on the next breath. It's really difficult to do, yeah? Be ready to die on the next breath. Yeah. So don't start there, because that might be too difficult, but some other time, not too far away. So this is contemplating death, and one of the Buddha gives some nice hints in the suttas on how to do this. So one of the ways of doing this is to remind yourself that many things go wrong in the world. So many things go wrong all the time. What are the ways you can die? This is one of the ways the Buddha says you should think. You can be bitten by a snake. I was hoping Freddie would show me a snake in the forest today. I didn't see any snakes. I was really disappointed with that. But one of these days. So seeing a snake is a sign of death. Straight away. Death is there. Anything can happen. Cars. I'm sure people die in the traffic in Hong Kong all the time, as they do everywhere else. Anything can happen. So you start to count those things by which you may die. There's probably illnesses inside all of us. Maybe cancer, something growing. We don't know what's happening. There's always some cancerous cells inside of us. It's just a matter of time usually before they start growing. All of these things are always there. So you remind yourself that death is a possibility. When you read about someone dying, or you hear about someone dying, don't think that is just another person. Usually when we hear about another person dying, it is like we other it. We say, that is not me, that is someone else. They were stupid. They didn't eat the right food, they didn't exercise, they didn't go to Della's beauty parlor. And so is that true? No, okay. So we tend to think about the world in the wrong way. We read about other people and we other it. We don't take it on board that those other people are just like us. So when you see another person dying, don't think it's a different person. Yeah, this is you. You are just like them. If they can die at whatever age, in whatever way, the same is true for you. And so you take these opportunities, because death is always around us. You take these opportunities to remind yourself, this is the reality. And as you do that, it starts to kind of sink in. And then when it starts to sink in, it starts to have this effect on you. Yeah, brings you into the present, allows you, makes you a better person as a consequence. And this is how you do these things. So, yeah. Okay, so this is the idea of death contemplation, understanding the danger of death, yeah, that you have to let go of everything, etc., etc., and then you seek this alternative kind of path, yeah, and the Buddha, of course, he decides just to walk off into the jungle and to find a solution to death. This is kind of the freedom from death. This is kind of the idea here. One thing I should point out is that the Pali word for freedom from death is amata, and is sometimes translated as deathless. And deathless is not really appropriate, because the problem here is he sees the problem is death. And so the answer to the solution to the problem is the freedom from death. Deathless, I don't know what that means. That may mean something else. But it's the freedom from death that we are really searching for and looking for here. And so this is one of the things that why I admire someone like the Buddha so much. I admire him because he had this audacity. Yeah, death is a problem. Okay, now I'm just going to walk off into the jungle. I'm going to find a solution to death. That's kind of really extraordinary here. There's something very powerful about that. And of course, he does precisely find that solution to the problem of death. So death is no longer a problem. So contemplating old age, sickness and death, yeah, allowing these ideas to slowly sink in. And as these ideas sink in, it sobers you up. The problem with the world, the problem with our desires, the problem with our attachments, they are a bit like being drunk. We are drunk on the world. We are intoxicated with the world. The mind is not really sober. And we walk around in this blur of the world, not really seeing things as they actually are, not really being mindful, lacking in clarity. And as you think of these things, the mind sobers up. Alcohol is only one kind of intoxication. There's so many different kinds of intoxication. Yeah, the Buddha talks about being intoxicated by being young, being intoxicated by being alive even. Yeah, I'm alive. Okay, do what I want. Being intoxicated by the sensual pleasures of the world. All of these things are different kind of intoxications in the sense that the mind goes amok, it becomes stupid, it becomes deluded. All of these things sober you up, and that is why they are so powerful. So be a sober person. Don't be drunk on the world, because if you're drunk on the world, if you are deluded, not sober, you're going to make so many mistakes. Drunk people make mistakes. And even if you're just drunk on the things of the world, you're going to make mistakes as a consequence. Okay, so then we have the idea of sorrow. So you are liable to sorrow. And because you are liable to sorrow, then you understand the drawbacks in sorrowing. So that's part of life, to sorrow. Everyone can expect this kind of suffering in their life. People die, you lose your things, you get depressed, you get sad, you break a leg, you cry. Some of this every day, almost a little bit of these things, and sometimes they are really big. And you have to expect these things to happen. We think that something has gone wrong when we sorrow, when things kind of don't go the way they should. Actually, nothing has gone wrong again. Everything has gone right when you sorrow. This is to be expected. It's a natural part of existence. And again, it makes life kind of a bit unbearable when you think that this is a natural part of life. It has to be part of our existence. sorrowing, being depressed, being sad, breaking a leg, losing your job, getting divorced. People in our life dying. Your child dying before you. I remember my father said that was one of the most difficult things, because my father passed away a few years ago, and my sister got cancer while he had cancer. And he said the most difficult thing was to see my sister having cancer, maybe dying before him. He said that was really, really hard. Because it feels like it goes against the natural order of things. But that happens in life. Sometimes your child dies before you. Nothing has gone wrong. This is the nature of things as well. Life is really unreasonable, really unfair. It doesn't go the way you want it to go. It goes according to cause and conditions. If it is the right time for someone to die, they will just die, because that is the way the world is. And so we stop having expectations of things going in a certain way. We come to accept these traumatic things in life. This is the way it is. You don't know what's going to happen. And you can see how this makes your mind move in a different direction. You lose a lot of that interest in the world because you understand how incredibly unreliable and uncertain everything is. So again, you sober up by understanding the nature of things. Don't wait until these things happen. Very often life is like, okay, things are going really well, and when things are going well, we become stupid. We can be intoxicated by things going well. We think, yay, things are going well. And we think this is always going to be, we have this kind of underlying feeling. If someone tells you, yeah, it's not going to last forever, say, yeah, whatever, and you're going to carry on because you don't really want to hear about it. And we kind of refuse to acknowledge the downside when things are going well. It's almost as if there's a kind of underlying feeling that this is going to carry on into the future, that now you have understood what life actually is like. And you have this, even though you know in one way that it's not going to last forever, there's also this illusion that this is, now it feels right. This is the way it's going to be. And so we tend to be stupid when things are going too well. So when things are going well, that is the time to reflect on life and to actually take the opportunity not to just to be silly with one's existence. Anyway, so then you have the drawback of being sorrow, and then the corruption. You're liable to be corrupted, and because you're liable to be corrupted, you see the danger in being corrupted. Why? Because being corrupted means that you may have, I don't know what kind of person you are. Maybe you probably like most people, you have some good qualities, some bad qualities. But remember, even if you have many good qualities, you are liable to become corrupted. Maybe you will become worse. You don't know what cause and conditions are going to be in the future. As long as there are some defilements left in your mind, there is the potential for these things growing and becoming worse. That's kind of really, really scary. Remember, these things are out of your control. This is the Buddhist idea of non-self, of anatta, anatman, is the idea that we are the result of the conditioning of the world on us, the people on us. And so we don't know what's going to happen around the corner. Suddenly our defilements blossom. We become a more angry person because we happen to be in the wrong environment. Maybe next time you get reborn, there isn't any Buddhism where you are. Maybe you kind of fall in with the wrong crowd, and you start hanging out with the triads instead. Or whatever it is. You don't know what's going to happen. It's so uncertain. And so because of that, when you understand that you are liable to being corrupted in this way, you become concerned about those defilements that remain in your mind, and you want to overcome them. You don't want to be born into a future life with these underlying things, which then may be completely out of control in your next life. Now is the chance to do something about these scary things. Especially overcome things like ill will and anger, because it's such a terrible thing that leads to so many problems for yourself and other people. You don't want to bring that with you into the future. So you take this opportunity, this life, to overcome this to the best of your ability. And I will talk more about how to overcome anger later on, because I talk about this on every retreat, and it's such an important thing to understand. And so this is then how the Buddha reflected. Yeah, these are the things that he understood. These are the things that cleared up his mind, undeluded him, freed him from all of these problems, all of these illusions, and then made him go forth and become a monastic as a consequence. And so these are liberating contemplations. They are not terrible things that we have to that we are forced to do. They are those things that actually lead to liberation if we do it in the right way. And this is what the Buddha's promise. Thinking about these things in the right way, they lead you on the right path and in the right direction. So, that is it for now. We're not making all that much headway, but anyway, we are getting there slowly. So, that is all. I'm not sure what we are going to do this evening, Della. It's this is a bit open to interpretation, this sheet. So there's a bit of guided meditation, maybe sutta, maybe Q&A. So we'll see what happens. So we'll see how things go. But 1 hour for guided meditation and Q&A, is that enough? You make it flexible, okay. So be flexible. That's kind of the thing. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can we say that we meet here at 7:30? Is that a good idea? Yeah. And then we do some meditation, do some Q&A and things. Maybe that. Yeah. So okay. So if you want to be part of the guided meditation, then 7:30. Yeah. And then we'll carry on with Q&A afterwards. Yeah. Okay, so let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.